Have you ever wondered what life was like for cavemen? Incest, non-consensual relationships, and a primitive world that marks the evolutionary history of our species. If this is your first time on the channel, subscribe now so you don't miss any important content about the darkest chapters of our history. Neanderthals, real cavemen. For those who don't know them, I present to you the Neanderthals, also known as the cavemen. These hominids lived during the Ice Age and adapted to an extreme climate by building their shelters in caves, which allowed them to keep their bodies warm and protect themselves from predators. The life of the Neanderthals revolved around these caves, hence their name, and they were essential for their survival. These prehistoric inhabitants were not originally from Europe, but from Africa. For millennia, their communities settled in what we now know as Eurasia, where the first archaeological remains were found. These fossil and cultural evidence are what allow us to understand their lifestyle and some of their customs. Physical characteristics of Neanderthals. And what were they like physically? Everything indicates that Neanderthals were quite different from us. In general terms, Neanderthal men and women were shorter than ours. That is, they were relatively low. But make no mistake, his build was robust, with developed muscles and a thick bone structure. This constitution allowed them to better retain heat and perform tasks that required strength, thus adapting to the icy environment of the time. Additionally, studies suggest that Neanderthals had large, prominent noses, which likely helped them warm cold air before it reached their lungs. Regarding their coloring, it is believed that their skin was light, with red hair and freckles, characteristics that allowed them better absorption of vitamin D in environments with less sun exposure. Social life and the importance of family. Far from the image of solitary beings, Neanderthals had a rich and important social life. Family and community were the center of their daily lives. Not only did they live together, but they also took care of each other. In case of illness or injury, the other members of the group took care of the affected person. When a Neanderthal died, ceremonial burials were performed, and their community held a period of mourning. This shows us that their sense of connection and empathy was similar to what we have today. Encounters between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. Perhaps one of the most fascinating moments in evolutionary history is the encounter between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, about 100,000 years ago. Our ancestors, Homo sapiens, began migrating from Africa to Europe, and along the way, they encountered these close relatives in Eurasia. Anthropologist Maria Martinon comments that this encounter must have been spectacular, since the two species differed in culture, technology, and anatomy. What followed was an intense coexistence, and according to genetic studies, there was also a more intimate interaction. The DNA of modern humans shows that between 1% and 2% of our genes come from Neanderthals. This means that the two species not only interbred geographically, but also biologically. However, not all of these relationships were peaceful or consensual. Complicated relationship and non-consensual sex. According to recent research, the relationship between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals was more complicated than we think. In many cases, these relationships were not voluntary, and it is likely that on numerous occasions they were forced. The communication barrier and cultural differences between both species would have made any type of consensual relationship difficult. In fact, it is possible that Homo sapiens, with a more marked hierarchical structure, saw Neanderthals as inferior beings and, consequently, imposed their dominance through force. The practice of incest in Neanderthal life. Another topic that may seem shocking is the practice of incest in the lives of Neanderthals. In a cave in Siberia, remains of a Neanderthal woman were discovered, and when her DNA was analyzed, it was found that her parents were close relatives, probably brothers or uncle and niece. The scientists conclude that inbreeding was common among Neanderthals due to their small, isolated communities. This practice resulted in various genetic diseases, affecting the viability of their descendants. Anthropologist Lara Weirich of Pennsylvania State University found evidence of deformities in Neanderthal skeletons, such as malformed vertebrae and teeth that remained long after childhood. These health problems, a consequence of inbreeding, show us a tragic aspect of their survival. Genitals and promiscuity in Neanderthals. Neanderthals had genitals similar to those of modern humans, showing that they were anatomically suitable for reproduction with Homo sapiens. However, there is one significant difference. Neanderthals are believed to have had a more active sex life than modern-day humans. Contrary to the image of the caveman dragging his partner into the cave, Neanderthals practiced sex in a way that could be considered normal by modern standards. This tendency towards promiscuity has been studied by analyzing the bones of their hands. The scientists found that the size of Neanderthals' fingers was an indicator of their high levels of testosterone, which is associated with greater aggression and promiscuity. This suggests that, on average, Neanderthals had more sexual encounters than modern humans. The favorite poses of Neanderthals. In the animal world, the face-to-face sexual position is rare, but Neanderthals and Homo sapiens shared this practice. The evolution towards the bipedal posture and the restructuring of the hip allowed the face-to-face position to be comfortable and effective for reproduction. This is how, in fact, the missionary position originated, which is much older than we imagine. Furthermore, this physical change also influenced Neanderthal women's pleasure. The restructuring of the body made the female orgasm possible, which results in longer retention of sperm, increasing the chances of pregnancy. Without this change, semen would leak out quickly, significantly reducing the chances of conception. The childhood of Neanderthals and their upbringing. In terms of childcare, Neanderthals maintained strong emotional ties and took care of their young. If a child fell ill or suffered an accident, they were cared for by their family, and in case of death, they received ceremonial burials. These funeral rites show the level of respect and affection they had for their descendants. Neanderthals cared about the well-being of their children, and archaeologists have found careful and protected graves. This affection towards their children is a trait that shows similarities with modern humans, and the childhood of Neanderthals, although lived in harsh conditions, was not devoid of affection and family protection. If you've come this far and learned something new from our stories, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next videos. Together, we can discover and remember the truths that history often tries to hide.